I switch your attentions to home and in particular to Oxford Street in London. I don't know whether you've been following this today. It's not been everywhere. I think it's fair to say. This was police being deployed to, this was probably the most famous shopping street in the UK, you would say, to Oxford Street, where you got your Selfridges and your John Lewis's and all your department stores. Less and less so these days, obviously, but that's a different story altogether. They were there to try and thwart the potential mass shoplifting based on a TikTok post that went viral. The Met Post even posted its own warning with a video of its mounted police.
Some people might be aware that there are plans for antisocial behaviour to happen here on Oxford Street. And what I would say to those people that are intending on doing that is that we will be here and we will not tolerate that activity here in London.
Okay, so that's what was posted. But what actually happened today, there's videos on social media, but there was also upheaval last summer and people would do anything to get hit. So I want to talk to someone who was actually there. They can say, was it a storm in a teacup? To what extent did things kick off? And we got some figures in terms of arrests. There was a few arrests there. We've seen that. There was a couple of social media influencers who were arrested. Joining me first, two guests in this. We'll look at the legal side second. But joining me first is Gemma Goldfingal, who's editor of the Retail Gazette and was there. Hiya, Gemma.
I'm fine, thanks, Colin. How are you?
Yeah, good. Listen, so what would you went down there today? I've watched various reports of people saying not much happened or it was pandemonium. What did you witness?
We worked about a minute away from Oxford Street, so when we popped down, it was pretty chaotic, to be honest. So I was walking down what is usually quite a quiet off-street, off Oxford Street, and probably about 50 to 100 teenagers came running towards me, followed in hot pursuit by a lot of police afterwards. And we turned into Oxford Street. I would say probably an eye line was about 10, 15 police vans. And I would say there's probably about 5 to 10 people in handcuffs outside of Oxford Circus tube station. So, it did kick off. It mightn't have been the huge looting that people were worried about, but there were hundreds, if not thousands, of teenagers on Oxford Street today.
Yeah, the most reliable video that I saw, and I could kind of look at it and say it didn't look like the ones from last year, that it did look like, I know what Oxford Street's like. I know it very, very well. You must work very near where I work. And I'm looking there and I'm going, okay, that's not a usual crowd. You can look at the age of who was there. How bizarre, Gemma, because there were those who were obviously intent on looting, maybe didn't have the big enough numbers to pull it off. But it felt like a lot of the crowd were young people that were there to get videos to go viral about a thing that went viral. So much of it felt like a social media, and all levels of wrong, by the way, which we could spend hours talking about. But do you know what I mean? It was almost like social media eating itself.
Yeah, I guess people just felt like they had to be there, whether they were looting or not. I didn't see any storming of shops and stuff like that. What the TikTok post was trying to urge people to do. I looked on social media. There has been the odd shopkeeper that said there were, but it was more like kind of 10 to 15 people trying to storm a store rather than the hundreds that people were worried about.
Yeah, I think there's isolated instances of small pockets taking stuff out of shops. Others pulled their shutters down. So the prior knowledge and the police presence, would it be fair to say, while there was upset, while there were clashes, and while it's obviously a really important thing to get into, it wasn't what you would describe as mass looting and probably not even the word, you would certainly wouldn't use the word riot.
Exactly. Like I remember back in kind of 2010, 11, when that was really a riot. Across various places in London, Tottenham Hale, kind of where it started off. I wouldn't say it was a full-scale riot or anything like that. As you said, there was a big police presence, and I think that was really important. Looking down Oxford Street, there was horses, there were vans. Very, very, clear to see that the police were doing what they could there. But, it must be scary for retail workers thinking that's going to happen to them. We saw the post take off on TikTok last night. We were expecting it. Yeah. It must be a pretty scary reality to go into work and expect that to happen.
Yeah, 100%. just before you go, Gemma, it's this type of show where we like to get to know people. I'm not going to make a gags that you've heard a million times before. It's the opposite. The most amazing second name, Goldfingal. I went down a bit of a rabbit hole today, just to investigate. Do you know, like 100 years ago, most Goldfingals lived in Northern Ireland?
Oh, all right, okay. I think I've got Irish roots, to be fair, but here's a little fact for you, Colin. Every Goldfingal in the world is directly related to me.
That's unbelievable. And I would like to meet one of those relatives, marry them, and then take their second name, because I really, really want to be called Colin Goldfingal. I would die a happy man if I could be Colin Goldfingal. It's brilliant.
Well, I'm a married woman, unfortunately, but we'll see if I can sort it out.
Well, doesn't matter. You're related to all of it. I've got the whole Goldfingals in the world to choose from, which is good news. Gemma, thank you so much. I expected you to talk, and you did, so thank you.
Thanks, Colin.
Thank you, Gemma Goldfingal, editor of the Retail Gazette. So what happens if you use social media to say, hey, let's go down here and let's loot shops? What's the legal implications? Let's talk to the barrister and broadcaster, Andrew Eborn, who joins us now. How are you doing, sir?
Colin Murray or Colin Goldfingal, it's a pleasure to join you.
So, yeah, talk me through the legalities of this, because I'm thinking if in a more traditional way that there was documented evidence that I incited trouble, that I incited lawlessness, there would be culpability for it. Has the law caught up with social media?
Absolutely, and it's a very interesting situation. I live just on the corner from the BBC at Portland Place, so I did see it myself. I spoke to some of the police officers involved, and basically, I mean, TikTok is extraordinary. It's been downloaded over 3.5 billion times. It's got excessive 1.5 billion active monthly users. It's what they call the crack cocaine of algorithms. And lots of engagement. So what's happened, as you say, it was a sort of social media almost eating itself. I didn't see any particular trouble. I spoke to some of the officers concerned, and they were very pleased to have some powers which they have under the Antisocial Behaviour Crime and Policing Act of 2014. What Section 35 gives them is what's called a dispersal power, which basically they can say that if any members of the public are being harassed, alarmed or distressed, or there's a likelihood of an occurrence of crime or disorder, they can issue this dispersal order. And a number of those were given to people, which then makes it an offence that if you don't leave the area within a set period, it could be up to 48 hours, then you risk imprisonment for a period not exceeding 3 months, or a fine up to 2,500. And the officers I spoke to were actually very grateful for that power, because they said that diffused a lot of situations. It was basically prevention was better than cure. But where the sort of incitement, if you like, came about, I mean, obviously various potential criminal acts could happen. You've got the Theft Act, obviously, which has got up to 7 years custody, the Criminal Damage Act, and so on and so forth. What there is under Serious Crime Act of 2007, there is under Section 44 an offence of intentionally encouraging or assisting an offence. And I would say that if you post, and I've seen the post on TikTok and the relevant thing, giving a date and a time and even things you should be wearing, and so on and so forth, your balaclava and your gloves, then that's it. Basically, it could be argued as encouraging somebody to commit a crime. And as a result, there should be some sort of liability there.
Yeah. But, Andrew, TikTok is a Chinese company. We get into jurisdiction when it comes to social media, when it comes to tech groups, don't we? It's like, who's in charge here? They are a Chinese company that say in their terms of service they're not liable for any of the posts. And I believe, and you'll know this, they wouldn't, if the police went, who's that? We want the details of who that is, who posted that. Their Twitter handle was the masked idiot or whatever. Then they would talk to the user before, even if the police said, here's evidence they've incited trouble, they would go to the user before sharing the data. Is that right?
Yeah, it's very interesting. What's happening, Colin, is the whole area about social media platforms, liability in terms of the content which they have. And we've got that not just for criminal side, but also for things like copyright and defamation. And they do, as you rightly say, TikTok say in their terms of service that they're not liable for any content posted by its users. Well, the law is basically saying, well, it depends on if the social media platform is taking a passive role, or an active role. And what's happening at the moment, as you probably know, the online safety bill is winging its way through Parliament as we speak. And that's going to impose an obligation on platforms to take a far more active role, to actually remove all illegal content and content which is banned by their own terms and conditions. Well, if this particular content were in breach of TikTok's terms and conditions, then that would be an obligation on them in the future to remove it.
Yeah.
Now, that obviously has got all sorts of implications. It's got cost implications about how you monitor it. You've got to be the sort of proportionality, if you like, about, well, hang on, do we do it on the basis that somebody informs us and then we have a relevant time? Or we can use what is my sort of pet area, if you like, using technology to help with that. So things such as AI, which can flag up sort of content, where you get things such as even things like facial recognition that people have been talking about fairly recently in the media. To what extent could that help with crime prevention? And it was Edward Bernays, the father of PR, who said that the best way of selling anything is through fear. And you turn around, if you make people scared, if people are scared of things looting and so on and so forth, then the question is, to what extent will that accelerate the use of these technologies as a result? But it's certainly a state of flux at the moment, and bigger and bigger obligations imposed on those social media platforms.
Andrew, it's been great to have you. I will say this, I believed everything that you said, apart from that the online safety bill is winging its way through Parliament. I'm not sure that's the right word. I don't think something that's moving that slow could be described as winging. But apart from that, I'm having... it's wading, or it's straining, or whatever, waddling, or whatever the word would be. A lot of important stuff.
I think that's a much better way of putting it, Colin.
That's exactly what it's doing. Andrew, thank you so much.
A real pleasure.
Always. There you go. Thank you, Andrew Eborn, broadcaster and barrister. Now,